Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning we'll be in 2 Kings chapter 6 verse 1 through chapter 7 verse 20. Some of the prophets said to Elisha, "Look, the place where we meet with you is too cramped for us. Let's go to the Jordan. Each of us will get a log from there, and we will build a meeting place for ourselves there." He said, "Go." One of them said, "Please come along with your servants." He replied, "All right, I'll come." So he went with them. When they arrived at the Jordan, they started cutting down trees. As one of them was felling a log, the axe head dropped into the water. He shouted, "Oh no, my master, it was borrowed." The prophet asked, "Where did it drop in?" When he showed him the spot, Elisha cut off a branch, threw it in at that spot, and made the axe head float. He said, "Lift it out." So he reached out his hand and grabbed it. Now the king of Syria was at war with Israel. He consulted his advisors, who said, "Invade at such and such a place." But the prophet sent this message to the king of Israel. "Make sure you don't pass through this place, because Syria is invading there." So the king of Israel sent a message to the place the prophet had pointed out, warning it to be on its guard. This happened on several occasions. This made the king of Syria upset, so he summoned his advisors and said to them, "One of us must be helping the king of Israel." One of his advisors said, "No, my master, O king, the prophet Elisha, who lives in Israel, keeps telling the king of Israel the things you say in your bedroom." The king ordered, "Go find out where he is, so I can send some men to capture him." The king was told, "He is in Dothan." So he sent horses and chariots there, along with a good-sized army. They arrived during the night and surrounded the city. The prophet's attendant got up early in the morning. When he went outside, there was an army surrounding the city, along with horses and chariots. He said to Elisha, "Oh no, my master, what will we do?" He replied, "Don't be afraid, for our side outnumbers them." Then Elisha prayed, "O Lord, open his eyes so he can see." The Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he saw that the hill was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. As they approached him, Elisha prayed to the Lord, "Strike these people with blindness." The Lord struck them with blindness, as Elisha requested. Then Elisha said to them, "This is not the right road or city. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man you're looking for." And he led them to Samaria. When they had entered Samaria, Elisha said, "O Lord, open their eyes so they can see." The Lord opened their eyes, and they saw that they were in the middle of Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he asked Elisha, "Should I strike them down, my master?" He replied, "Do not strike them down. You did not capture them with your sword or bow, so what gives you the right to strike them down? Give them some food and water so they can eat and drink, and then go back to their master." So he threw a big banquet for them, and they ate and drank. Then he sent them back to their master. After that, no Syrian raiding parties again invaded the land of Israel. Later, King Ben-Hadad of Syria assembled his entire army and attacked and besieged Samaria. Samaria's food supply ran out. They laid siege to it so long that a donkey's head was selling for 80 shekels of silver, and a cab of dove's droppings for 5 shekels of silver. While the king of Israel was passing by on the city wall, a woman shouted to him, "Help us, my master, O king." He replied, "No, let the Lord help you. How can I help you? The threshing floor and winepress are empty." Then the king asked her, "What's your problem?" She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Hand over your son. We'll eat him today, and then eat my son tomorrow.' So we boiled my son and ate him. Then I said to her the next day, 'Hand over your son, and we'll eat him.' But she hid her son." When the king heard what the woman said, he tore his clothes. As he was passing by on the wall, the people could see he was wearing sackcloth under his clothes. Then he said, "May God judge me severely if Elisha, son of Shaphat, still has his head by the end of the day." Now Elisha was sitting in his house with the community leaders. The king sent a messenger on ahead, but before he arrived, Elisha said to the leaders, "Do you realize this assassin intends to cut off my head? Look, when the messenger arrives, shut the door and lean against it. His master will certainly be right behind him." He was still talking to them when the messenger approached and said, "Look, the Lord is responsible for this disaster. Why should I continue to wait for the Lord to help?" Elisha replied, Hear the word of the Lord. This is what the Lord says. About this time tomorrow, a seah of finely milled flour will sell for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria. An officer who was at the king's right-hand man responded to the prophet, Look, even if the Lord made it rain by opening holes in the sky, could this happen so soon? Elisha said, Look, you will see it happen with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of the food. Now 4 men with a skin disease were sitting at the entrance of the city gate. They said to one another, Why are we just sitting here waiting to die? If we go into the city, we'll die of starvation. And if we stay here, we'll die. So come on, let's defect to the Syrian camp. If they spare us, we'll live. If they kill us, well, we were going to die anyway. So they started toward the Syrian camp at dusk. When they reached the edge of the Syrian camp, there was no one there. The Lord had caused the Syrian camp to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a large army. Then they said to one another, Look, the king of Israel has paid the kings of the Hittites in Egypt to attack us. So they got up and fled at dusk, leaving behind their tents, horses, and donkeys. They left the camp as it was and ran for their lives. When the men with the skin disease reached the edge of the camp, they entered a tent and had a meal. They also took some silver, gold, and clothes, and went and hid it all. Then they went back and entered another tent. They looted it and went and hid what they had taken. Then they said to one another, It's not right what we're doing. This is a day to celebrate, but we haven't told anyone. If we wait until dawn, we'll be punished. So come on, let's go and inform the royal palace. So they went and called out the gatekeepers of the city. They told them, We entered the Syrian camp, and there was no one there. We didn't even hear a man's voice. But the horses and donkeys are still tied up, and the tents remain open. The gatekeepers relayed the news to the royal palace. The king got up in the night and said to his advisers, I'll tell you what the Syrians have done to us. They know we're starving, so they left the camp and hid in the field, thinking, When they come out of the city, we will capture them alive and enter the city. One of his advisers replied, Pick some men and have them take 5 of the horses that are left in the city. Even if they are killed, their fate will be no different than that of all the Israelite people. We're all going to die. Let's send them out so we can know for sure what's going on. So they picked 2 horsemen, and the king sent them out to track the Syrian army. He ordered them, Go and find out what's going on. So they tracked them as far as the Jordan. The road was filled with clothes and equipment that the Assyrians had discarded in their haste. The scouts went back and told the king. Then the people went out and looted the Syrian camp. A seah of finely milled flour sold for a shekel, and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, just as the Lord had said they would. Now the king had placed the officer who was his right-hand man at the city gate. When the people rushed out, they trampled him to death in the gate. This fulfilled the prophet's word, which he had spoken when the king tried to arrest him. The prophet told the king, 2 seahs of barley will sell for a shekel, and a seah of finely milled flour for a shekel. This will happen about this time tomorrow in the gate of Samaria. But the officer replied to the prophet, Look, even if the Lord made it rain by opening holes in the sky, could this happen so soon? Elisha said, Look, you will see it happen with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of the food. This is exactly what happened to him. The people trampled him to death in the city gate. So, back in chapter 6, you have this story of Elisha recovering an axe head miraculously. And at the start of it, you have some text that's easy to gloss over. Some of the prophets said to Elisha, Look, the place where we meet with you is too cramped for us. This implies that Elisha's ministry was big enough that the traditional meeting place wasn't big enough for all of the prophets. And then, of course, you have the story of the axe head being rescued miraculously. And then you have the Arameans plotting to raid Israel. But them being thwarted on multiple attempts. So they eventually go after Elisha, and that doesn't go well for them at all. As they're all struck down with blindness, Elisha leads them into the very heart of Samaria. And, you have, I suppose, good relations being established with the king of Israel at that point, as the king refers to Elisha as his master. Should I strike them down, my master? So then you have this story of Ben-Hadad besieging Samaria, so much so that the city is starving at this point, and you have gruesome things happening. Yeah. But this was predicted. If Israel turned their back on God, this was exactly what was prophesied would happen. Yeah, in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 52 and 53, it says, "They will besiege all of your villages until all of your high and fortified walls collapse, those in which you put your confidence throughout the land. They will besiege all your villages throughout the land the Lord your God has given you. You will then eat your own offspring, the flesh of the sons and daughters of the Lord your God has given you, because of the severity of the siege by which your enemies will constrict you." Yeah, and in verse 58 and 59, "If you refuse to obey all the words of this law, the things written in the scroll, and refuse to fear this glorious and awesome name, the Lord your God, then the Lord will increase your punishments and those of your descendants, great and long-lasting afflictions and severe enduring illnesses." So this was prophesied punishment for them. So continuing on in Acts chapter 15, verse 36 through 16, verse 15. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Let's return and visit the brothers in every town where we proclaimed the word of the Lord, to see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to bring John, called Mark, along with them too. But Paul insisted that they should not take along this one who had left them in Pamphylia and had not accompanied them in the work. They had a sharp disagreement, so they parted company. Barnabas took along Mark and sailed away to Cyprus, but Paul chose Silas and set out, commended to the grace of the Lord by the brothers and sisters. He passed through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the churches. He also came to Derbe and to Lystra. A disciple named Timothy was there, the son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but whose father was a Greek. The brothers in Lystra and Iconium spoke well of him. Paul wanted Timothy to accompany him, and he took him and circumcised him, because of the Jews who were in those places. For they all know that his father was a Greek. As they went through the towns, they passed on the decrees that had been decided on by the apostles and elders in Jerusalem for the Gentile believers to obey. So the churches were being strengthened in the faith and were increasing in number every day. They went through the region of Phrygia and Galatia, having been prevented by the Holy Spirit from speaking the message in the province of Asia. When they came to Mysia, they attempted to go into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them to do this. So they passed through Mysia and went down to Troas. A vision appeared to Paul during the night. A Macedonian man was standing there, urging him, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." After Paul saw the vision, we attempted immediately to go over to Macedonia, concluding that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them. We put out to sea from Troas and sailed a straight course to Samothrace, the next day to Neapolis, and from there to Philippi, which is a leading city of that district of Macedonia, a Roman colony. We stayed in this city for some days. On the Sabbath day we went outside the city gate to the side of the river, where we thought there would be a place of prayer, and we sat down and began to speak to the women who had assembled there. A woman named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth from the city of Thyatira, a God-fearing woman, listened to us. The Lord opened her heart to respond to what Paul was saying. After she and her household were baptized, she urged us, "If you consider me to be a believer in the Lord, come and stay in my house." And she persuaded us. Huh. So you have this stark disagreement early on here between Paul and Barnabas during their second missionary journey. So Barnabas takes Mark along with him to Cyprus, but Paul chooses Silas and sets out to Syria and Cilicia, which is interesting. Syria was the nation that invaded Israel here in the 2 Kings passage we were reading. Carrying on, Psalm chapter 142, verses 1 through 7. To the Lord I cry out. To the Lord I plead for mercy. I pour out my lament before him. I tell him about my troubles. Even when my strength leaves me, you watch my footsteps. In the path where I walk, they have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see. No one cares about me. I have nowhere to run. No one is concerned about my life. I cry out to you, O Lord. I say, you are my shelter, my security in the land of the living. Listen to my cry for help, for I am in serious trouble. Rescue me from those who chase me, for they are stronger than I am. Free me from prison, that I may give thanks to your name. Because of me, the godly will assemble, for you will vindicate me. And finally, Proverbs chapter 17, verses 24 and 25. Wisdom is directly in front of the discerning person, but the eyes of a fool run to the ends of the earth. A foolish child is a grief to his father, and bitterness to the mother who bore him. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.